This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Susie Gehring.
Oil shock. Prices rise to their highest level this year as Iraq violence intensifies. Some experts say oil could easily go higher.
Production disruption as the conflict escalates. A number of American energy companies with operations in Iraq could feel the heat.
And show me the profits. Add streaming music to the list of things Amazon now offers, but will it help increase earnings, something shareholders keep looking for? All that and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Thursday, June 12th.
Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with the escalating violence and chaos across Iraq. And even though al-Qaeda militants have taken over cities and are closing in on oil refineries thousands of miles from Wall Street, the impact here in the U.S. is clear. Stocks have been plunging and the price of oil surging. As more regions of Iraq fall into the hands of insurgents, there are calls for the U.S. to intervene in the crisis on fears that the uprising could spread beyond Iraq's borders. 3 years after American troops have pulled out of Iraq, government officials in Baghdad are now asking the U.S. for assistance in containing the rebels. But President Obama has made no commitments and says he's looking at all options.
I don't rule out anything because we do have a stake in making sure that these jihadists are not getting a permanent foothold in either Iraq or Syria.
Meanwhile, the violence is heightening worries about the supply of oil and a spike in energy prices. Let's look at the closing prices today. Brent oil futures climbed to $113 a barrel today. The cost of West Texas crude jumped more than $2, hitting the highest price of the year, $106 a barrel. Jackie DeAngelis has more on the outlook for oil and gasoline prices.
The geopolitical situation in Iraq causing volatility in oil prices on both sides of the Atlantic. This as prices have remained relatively high for the last few weeks. What's interesting, however, is that gas prices have remained relatively stable recently. The current average for a gallon of regular gasoline is $3.64, according to AAA's fuel gauge report. That's down 2 cents from a week ago and only a penny higher than the same time last year. But this could be the calm before the storm. If geopolitical tensions in Iraq worsen and oil prices climb higher, traders say expect to pay more the next time you fill up.
Over $3 a barrel wholesale for gasoline is going to be the level. We're headed above that level. And the important thing here is that refiners aren't going to have a tremendous amount of excess capacity. So we are going to see some supply constraints in gasoline this summer.
And while no one likes paying more at the pump, analysts have often likened gas prices to taxes. No one likes to pay more, and when they have to, they cut elsewhere.
To say that the average consumer is suffering from high gas prices is probably a little bit of an understatement, and this last 5% move in a week could be a real kick in the pants to them as well.
Adding fuel to the fire, comments from President Obama earlier today that he isn't ruling anything out, leaving the door open for possible U.S. intervention. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Jackie DeAngelis.
The trouble in Iraq impacts a lot of U.S. energy companies that do business there. Morgan Brennan now with a look at which firms have operations in Iraq and what's at stake.
Iraq has the 5th largest proven crude oil reserves in the world. As the conflict escalates, the threat of disruption to production looms. It's a scenario that could impact a number of U.S. energy companies, starting with integrated oil giants. ExxonMobil, Hess, Marathon Oil, Occidental Petroleum, and Murphy Oil all have operations throughout Iraq. And of these names, Exxon, the most exposure. But analysts say Iraq still only accounts for a small percentage of these companies' overall global production, meaning the benefits associated with rising oil prices could more than offset the negative impacts associated with local disruptions.
The other 95, 96, 97% of the business for these guys is now theoretically more profitable. There's more business to do because the oil price is higher, just so long as you don't get it so high where you start to worry about GDP growth and doing some economic damage.
Another industry with exposure to Iraq, the oil field services companies, which service and maintain oil companies' equipment.
You're talking about Halliburton, Schlumberger, Weatherford, and to a lesser extent Baker Hughes. They made an early push into the country. A lot of operations in the South, frankly, haven't been terribly profitable. They've been trying to push that back to break even or maybe a little bit better. Have had some success with that.
Production disruptions could have a greater impact on these companies' bottom lines, something we've seen before when Baker Hughes reduced fourth-quarter profit after operations were suspended at a facility in Iraq just last year. Still, a lot is going to come down to location. Southern Iraq accounts for the lion's share of the country's oil output, but it's actually Kurdistan to the north where energy companies stand to lose the most. That's because many oil companies and oil field servicers have been increasing their investments and operations in that region. It's held the promise of bigger profits than the South, and escalating conflict could derail those efforts. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Morgan Brennan.
John Kilduff joins us now to talk more about Iraq and the impact on U.S. energy prices. He's founding partner at Again Capital. John, thanks for coming by to talk with us.
Thank you.
Let me start right off with prices and where they're going. You're predicting worst case scenario that if things really get bad, it could get up to $150 a barrel. Talk us through your thinking on that.
Well, in times like this, we're already in a multi-month high right now. So we dust off the chart and see where's the high water mark when you look back. That was 2008 when we hit $147 a barrel. So just sort of sitting here today, round number, resistance, and an upside target. That's the number. We've gotten through 105. Next up is 110. I think after that, that'll be generated by some real damage on the ground or real worries or even what I'm calling a credible threat to Baghdad or the central government. That's when we're off to the races, and you'll see those numbers.
Worst case, 150. What is the likeliest case in your view?
You know, I'm not too sure on this one, Tyler, to be honest with you. This happened so quickly. The oil market hasn't overreacted to this because the northern output from Iraq has been offline for months. So this is nothing really new that the market hasn't been able to deal with already. But the southern oil facilities, that's 3 million.
That's the bulk of their production.
That's 100% of it right now. It's 3 million barrels a day. To put that in perspective, that's 10% of OPEC's 30 million barrel a day commitment to the world right now. So it's a lot. It's meaningful and it can't be made up. So that's when you start to get into this what if scenario. I think if it calms down and they relax, you know, prices will come down quite quickly.
And then what kind of adjustments can you make for going offline? I mean, will OPEC increase its production? Will the U.S. tap into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? I mean, what kinds of things can we expect?
Well, OPEC doesn't have the capacity to make up those 3 million barrels. It's just not there. So that's what makes this so dire if it is impacted. The U.S. does have upwards of 1 billion barrels in storage. It could tap them. Thankfully, we are producing 8.4 million barrels a day ourselves, but that's not enough to insulate us from this. So this represents still a shock to the system. Every $10 a barrel that's sustained, it's a half a point off GDP, and the numbers start going from there. Because what happens when that pump price hits $4.50, say $5?
That's what I want to ask you. What do you see for prices at the pump later this summer into the Labor Day season?
You're talking $4.55 as a result of the kinds of prices. If we get to that 110, 115, 120 easily, and the boomerang effect on that, Tyler, is the consumer confidence just implodes on that, and then it's a whole big syndrome of people pulling back for a variety of reasons, not spending on retail and vacations, and we're back in a recession.
You know, I saw a headline today saying that the Iraq civil war threatens the whole global energy supply for years. That seems like a really strong statement. How true is that?
Well, you know, this whole situation was predicted when Iraq was first invaded back in 2003. We were worried about the country breaking apart. We were worried about a Shia arc because where the Shia are, the Iranians, the central government in Iraq is where most of the oil is. But this is really a pitched battle between the Sunnis, who are the Saudis, and the UAE, versus Iran, principally, and now their counterparties in Iraq. So this upsets the entire balance, and it's not as if these are Sunnis that are friendly to us like the Saudis are. Right. They're a pretty brutal group, as we're all finding out. So they're not going to be too inclined to get lower oil prices to the West to keep our economy going. So it's a problem all around.
All right. A lot of good information. John, thanks again for
Thank
coming
you.
by. Appreciate it. John Kilduff with Again Capital.
Well, rising fuel prices are a big concern for the nation's biggest airlines because jet fuel is a carrier's largest single expense. Shares of the big airlines took some hits today. Delta and United both fell more than 5%. American, Southwest, and JetBlue all saw significant losses as well.
Meanwhile, on Wall Street, stocks fell on those worries about Iraq, but also on some disappointing economic news, a smaller than forecast rise in retail sales in the month of May, and a surprise jump in jobless claims. Here's how the major averages ended the session. The Dow tumbled 110 points, its second triple-digit loss in a row. The Nasdaq down 34. The S&P lost 13 points.
General Motors is looking to drive its share price higher. The automaker's board has approved the repurchase of 5 million shares of company stock, hoping to offset the bad press and expense of that disastrous and tragic ignition switch debacle and recall. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that money inherited from individual retirement accounts can be taken by creditors to cover bankruptcy debts. In a unanimous ruling, the court said inherited IRA money not received from a spouse is not protected in bankruptcy proceedings, unlike most other retirement savings accounts.
Well, anyone under 65 who is planning on retiring this year may need that IRA money and a whole lot more. Fidelity Investments says that couples retiring at age 65 in the year 2014 should expect to incur $220,000 in health care costs during their retirement. And that's even with Medicare coverage. And that figure doesn't include the added cost of nursing home or long-term care.
Still ahead, downward drop. Can Lululemon, the once hot yoga wear maker, rebuild trust with its customers and turn the stock around?
The chairman of the Federal Communications Commission is asking telecom and cable companies to step up and take the lead on fending off cyber attacks. Tom Wheeler urged companies like Verizon, AT&T, and Time Warner to take responsibility and market accountability for preventing and managing hacking attacks before the agency has to impose new regulations.
Shares of Lululemon under attack today, with investors turning sour after the chain reported profits plunged 60% last quarter and as well lowered its outlook for the full year. Shares turned south, tumbling 16%. The upscale yoga wear seller says that much of that drop in profit was due to a bigger tax bill. But as Courtney Reagan explains, Lululemon's getting squeezed from all sides.
It was a lemon of an earnings report for Lulu, and the yoga wear retailer isn't inspiring much confidence that it will get better anytime soon. While Lululemon did report a stronger than expected first quarter and announced a $450 million share buyback, its sales and profit forecast and unexpected news that CFO John Curry will retire at the end of the fiscal year is causing concern among investors. Aggravating matters further, there's little namaste among the board, with founder, board member, and large stakeholder Chip Wilson continuing to bring tension to the Lulu family, voting against the current chairman and another board member, saying neither fits with the core values of the company. When asked about the board division on the earnings call, current CEO Laurent Pontdevin said candidly,
"Our parents are fighting and it's awkward."
While Lululemon has a high level of customer loyalty, it struggled to recover from last year's see-through pants recall and lately uninspiring product. The new CEO calls 2014 a transitional year as it works on new product design and revamps its manufacturing process, though some analysts think the period of investment may last longer than a year.
Positive comps really aren't expected until the fourth quarter at the earliest, as they're living through product from the old design team. They're spending money on traffic driving initiatives in the second quarter into the third quarter, but it's a work in progress. It's not the same Lulu that it was a year ago or 2 years ago.
As the athletic wear category grows, so does the competition. Lulu may not be the same retailer it was a couple years ago, but it's still worth more than $6 billion. It's culturally different enough from competitors Under Armour and Nike that it's an unlikely acquisition for either. Gap's Athleta has also seen sales grow, as well as private label athletic wear from department stores, all likely taking pieces of Lulu's market share. As competition intensifies and Lulu stumbles, investors are beginning to wonder if the once Wall Street darling is now a falling star. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Courtney Reagan.
Intel hikes its outlook, sending shares up as much as 4% in after-hours trading, and that's where we begin tonight's market focus. The chip maker increased its guidance for the second quarter and also for the full year, saying it expects stronger than expected demand for personal computers. Earlier, it was calling for flat revenue this year. Now it expects some growth. Ahead of that, after the bell news, shares rose slightly to $27.96. Land's End was popular with investors today after posting strong first quarter earnings. The clothing chain, which was recently spun off from Sears, saw profits surge on higher revenues and margins, also driving up those earnings, promotions, and a better assortment of merchandise. The stock jumped 8% to $28.79. And a shakeup of top executives at Twitter. The social media chief operating officer, Ali Rogani, has resigned, but he will stay on as strategic advisor to the chief executive. Twitter says it doesn't expect to hire a replacement. Shares popped 3.5% to $36.79.
And a surprise move by the founder and CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk. He is opening up his company's technology patents to any automaker who wants to make long-range electric cars. Musk says an open-source philosophy will increase development of more and better electric cars, leading to more sales across the sector and actually strengthen Tesla's market share. Shares of Tesla, though, didn't react favorably there, down at $203.52. Mobile Iron saw its shares jump in its trading debut. The company makes software that protects corporate data accessed by employees on smartphones. The offering raised $100 million with shares priced at $9 apiece. The stock rose 22% to $11.02.
Good news for pro golfer Phil Mickelson on this first day of the U.S. Open tournament. New York Times reports that the lucky lefty was not involved in any insider trading of shares of Clorox around the time that billionaire investor Carl Icahn was trying to acquire the company back in 2011. Wall Street regulators had been looking into some timely trades of Clorox around that time of the takeover attempt, including trades by Mickelson.
Well, of course, products bought on Amazon seem to be just about everywhere, your closets, your cupboards, even your living room. And now Amazon has launched a streaming music service for Amazon Prime subscribers aimed at your iPod or cell phone. Julia Borston has more.
In addition to free shipping and streaming video, subscribers to Amazon's $99 annual Prime service now get another perk, Amazon Music, ad-free streaming access to more than 1 million tracks, with an app for Apple and Android devices. This comes as Amazon expands into everything from grocery delivery to a marketplace for local services to producing its own original videos. Amazon Music has a heavy emphasis on playlists, and most of the songs are at least 6 months old, not new releases. Its ink deals with 2 of the 3 biggest music labels, Sony and Warner Music Group, featuring the likes of The Doors, Madonna, and Green Day. But it hasn't yet made a deal with the largest label, Universal Music, which has A-listers including Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, and Elton John. Amazon's sale of music downloads already make it a huge player in the music business. Today's launch makes its Prime subscription more appealing on the heels of a $20 price hike and helps it compete with increasingly formidable rivals. Apple's bolstering its music portfolio with its recent $3 billion acquisition of Beats. Google has its Music Play Store and streaming, and Spotify and Pandora are both on the rise.
And that'll mean that Amazon is not going to favor well compared to, let's say, Spotify or Pandora. And that'll be a challenge for it, but I think Amazon will respond by saying, hey, if you're a Prime customer, this is all free. So it's not a direct comparison in the first place.
But unlike those services focused just on music, Amazon is making a bigger play for everything consumers do.
Amazon is trying to create a complete portfolio of experiences for its customers, from books to summer shorts to now a music subscription service. It needs the full package in order to keep people coming back day after day.
One way to keep consumers coming back? A phone. There are reports that Amazon will unveil one at an event coming up on June 18th. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Julia Borston in Los Angeles.
Coming up, soccer fans have the World Cup. Stock fans now have Nightly Business Report's new Ultimate Stock Cup Challenge. We'll explain next.
Today, the world's biggest sporting event, the World Cup, begins. 32 countries battling out on the world stage for the ultimate prize in soccer, or football, if that's your taste. So that got us thinking, who are some of the best global rivals in the business world? And so over the next 4 weeks, coinciding with the tournament in Brazil, we will take a look at 16 companies that battle it out every day in global business. And we will have an analyst tell you which stock he or she favors right now. Call it NBR's Ultimate Stock Cup, the Global Rival Edition. These companies compete like Spain and Portugal, Argentina and Brazil. And tonight, we start with a classic, Coke versus Pepsi. It's perhaps the strongest brand in the world, Coca-Cola. Born 1886, headquarters Atlanta. Annual sales almost $47 billion. The original carbonated, caffeinated confection was an instant hit, rising quickly to become a global icon. But as demand for cola leveled off, Coke has played to its strengths in bottling and distribution, time and again to forge big wins. The roster filled with one superstar name after another. Nestea, Minute Maid, Sprite, Tab, Fresca, and High C. Recent additions include Capri Sun, Dasani Water, Powerade, Honest Tea, and even a rock star. 12 years younger than Coke, Pepsi Cola was first mixed by a North Carolina pharmacist. Nowadays, its home is in Purchase, New York. Annual sales more than $66 billion. Bankrupt twice in the 20th century, the Pepsi Cola Company merged with Frito-Lay way back in 1965 and became PepsiCo. It owns beverage brand legends like 7-Up, Tropicana, and Gatorade, but also added Quaker Oats back in 2001. And 8 years later, snack food supremacy drove Pepsi's overall market value past Coke's for the first time, and it remains there today.
Let's turn to Caroline Levy for her play-by-play on these two powerhouse brands. She's beverage analyst and managing director at CLSA America. So, Caroline, sticking with this sports lingo, you're saying that on the field, Pepsi outruns, outscores Coke. Now, tell us the key reason why.
Right. Well, really, it's not because Coke is not the stronger player in beverages. They definitely aren't, particularly on a global stage. Coke and Pepsi are a little more neck and neck in the US, but globally, Coke is the clear winner in beverages. However, more than half of Pepsi's earnings come from snacks. And we have an activist involved in Pepsi who wants the company to split. So from a stock perspective, we find Pepsi much more interesting.
Do you think it may ultimately be split into various divisions of food and beverage, or what?
I actually do. In 2009, when I first joined CLSA, we wrote that it should split. And now we have Nelson Peltz and Trian involved in really trying to make that happen. I think analysts for many years have felt, as I do, that companies that do one thing extremely well will get a better valuation. And so we don't believe in power of one. I certainly don't. I think that a Pepsi beverage company globally and a snack company globally would be far stronger standalone.
You know, every good team has to have their star players and their strong bench. And we know at Pepsi, Nelson Peltz has been critical of Indra Nooyi and other management people. In the case of Coca-Cola, CEO Muhtar Kent has come under attack by everyone from Warren Buffett to shareholders about compensation packages. How do you rank these two management teams?
Well, I think Indra is criticized for not having ever run a division. She is financially very savvy. I think that she has been involved in things like marketing and sort of operating strategy in which she doesn't have experience. And I think the results have been some serious market share losses in beverages, especially in big brands like Tropicana, which used to dominate high-end orange juice and no longer does, and Gatorade. So, you know, I think that's the big criticism of Indra. The operating capability would be better in someone else's hands. Muhtar came in a hero. He really grew up in the bottling system, was really a man of the people. I think increasingly has become a global diplomat and spokesperson for the company. And, you know, other people are running the business, but he's still commanding strategy.
We're a little short on time. Nobody markets better than Coke, Caroline, and yet you have an underperform rating on this.
I do, and again, we're talking about the stocks here, and the soft drink business is a very tricky one right now. I think there are going to be sugar taxes imposed beyond Mexico, where that already happened in January, and I think there's risk of state and local taxation. sugar taxes in the U.S. and taxes in other countries. So I think carbonated soft drinks in particular are strategically challenged.
And so you like Pepsi. How good can it get there? It's right now trading around $87. What's your target on it?
$97 target. If it splits, I think you see the stock over 100 splits in terms of, the beverage snack business. And, there's a reasonable chance now that that may happen.
Pepsi beats Coke. I assume you're going to root for England. Am I wrong?
Well, I'm South African, so,
Oh.
I'm conflicted.
Well, okay. All right. Very good. Caroline, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All righty. You just heard which stock our guest prefers. We want to know what you think, Coke or Pepsi. Vote in our Ultimate Stock Cup on our website, nbr.com.
And finally tonight, this year's World Cup in Brazil already has one claim to fame. It's the most expensive ever. The estimated cost for hosting the games is reportedly more than $11 billion. 4 years ago, the same tournament cost South Africa only $4 billion. But there's also a historical benefit for the winning country. The victors' national economy, on average, has outperformed the world economy by 3.5% in the month following the tournament. And why do they call it the world's most popular sporting event? More than 3 billion, yes, 3 billion watched 4 years ago. Even more people are expected this year. And, Tyler, to put that in perspective, if you combine the Super Bowl, the World Series, the U.S. Golf Open, there's still more people
Doesn't
watching
add up to this at all.
It's amazing.
And Brazil and Croatia were playing earlier today.
Who's winning there?
I don't know who was winning there.
Stay tuned for that. That's Nightly Business Report for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susie Garrow.
I'm Tyler Mathisen. Thanks from me as well. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
I'm Susie Garrett with a Nightly Business Report news brief. Worries about violence in Iraq pulled down stocks on Wall Street and pushed up oil prices. Investors were on high alert after militants took control of another major city in Iraq, raising worries about oil supply disruptions and violence spreading across Iraq's borders. Adding to the stress, a smaller than forecast rise in retail sales and a surprise jump in jobless claims. The Dow tumbled 110 points, the Nasdaq was down 34, and the S&P lost 13 points. Oil topped $106 a barrel. Shares of upscale yoga wear maker Lululemon fell 16% after quarterly profits were cut in half. And automaker Tesla is opening its technology patents to any automaker that wants to manufacture long-range electric cars. Be sure to tune in to Nightly Business Report right here on your public television station.